can go first, and then we'll pick you up.
Great. Well, revenue is something I know a little bit about. And as assessor for the last 6 years, we've been able to bring in over $300 million more of revenue in working with very closely with the tax collector's office. And it just shows that if we can make government work more efficiently, there is more revenue out there. The other thing that I think we have to look at much smarter tax policy. One of the things that I think the art community can do is join me in my quest to close a loophole in Prop 13. I mean, that is, to me, a huge source of funding that has caused the downfall of our education system and has really shattered a lot of our ability to fund many things that I think are absolutely critical to our society. We obviously need to go close the hotel tax loophole around the internet companies like Expedia, Orbitz. I think that's sort of very odd that you could get the same room next to each other and you pay 2 different taxes. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So I think when people talk about that there's not revenue to be gotten, I think they're wrong. So I think there is more money out there. I think that obviously the number one way we can grow revenue is through jobs. It's clear that a critical part of growing our economy and growing jobs in San Francisco is maintaining this creative economy. We're an innovation economy. We can't go the way that Cupertino is going. I think Cupertino wants to go the way that we're going. I don't think you're going to see cities like Cupertino, Sunnyvale say, hey, we're looking to defund arts. They're probably trying to find ways to increase the funding for the arts. And I think we need to do the same thing. So I think this whole race to the bottom is not very smart, because the more we cut, then obviously the less we're going to get out of our economy. I think in terms of the America's Cup, I think just like with developments, I don't think we should have developments that are separate from art, or we should have America's Cup separate from art. If you look at when we hosted the World's Fair many, many years ago, much of the fair is actually torn down, but the World's Fair left something that stayed for over 100 years, that is now iconic in San Francisco. I think if the America's Cup is going to bring in the money that we've predicted, which is billions of dollars, I think the America's Cup should leave behind something that is also iconic and that would contribute to San Francisco, not just this next year, but really for the next 100 years to come. I think, again, the most important point is we need to do a better job of actually defining how art does return our investment. We can't just say, oh, we paid money and we got this nice painting or this nice sculpture. I think we have to really drive and do a better job to say, how is arts really bringing in tax dollars, bringing in people, bringing in tourism? Obviously, if we didn't have art, I don't think tourists would come to San Francisco. That's part of one of the major attractions here, is that cannot be seen, again, as a luxury. It's got to be seen as a critical part of the economy, that if we took it away, that the economy would change. That the economy that we have in terms of digital media or life sciences or clean technology would not be there.
Thanks.
Question?
I was thinking about my pitch, I'm sorry. You wanted to talk a little bit more. Not everybody knows about split roll, and I think you have shown tremendous leadership in articulating why that aspect of Prop 13 needs to be reformed.
Thanks, Bevan. So Prop 13 is somebody who implements Prop 13 every single day. We are subsidizing office buildings, the Westfield Mall, AT&T Ballpark, the same way we're subsidizing homeowners. And I think there's a very logical reason that no one should lose their home because of property taxes. I think there's a very logical reason that for folks who are on fixed incomes, they should not be taxed out of their home or kicked out of their home because they don't have the ability to pay for an income tax rate. Now, I don't know why that same principle applies to the Westfield Mall or to Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue or to the Bank of America building or to the Transamerica building. I think all of those properties who are actually making money should be taxed accordingly. It shouldn't get any sort of subsidy that we are giving to all homeowners. And if you look at it, by removing that subsidy, we could generate about $7 billion for the state of California. $7 billion. If you think about it, we have a $20 billion deficit. Just by doing that one thing, we could close that deficit in a third. So I think it's so important for us as we're thinking about ways, we don't want to get into this race for the bottom, where we're competing with each other or fighting, the choices between art versus education versus public health versus muni. I think we have to look at, rethink and rework the ways that we're thinking about how we're bringing in the money. and challenge that assumption.
And now you can answer that question.
Super. Thank you. When I worked for Mayor Willie Brown and I was Director of Neighborhood Services, he used to like to bring people together in sort of a collaborative, creative process. And one of the things he used to do was he'd have a once-a-month meeting of all the heads of the different neighborhood groups. And you could come in and you could have a wild hair about something, and you'd have your opportunity to get your moment in front of the mayor, and department heads would be there and so forth. And there was a tiny dynamo named Carmen Ramirez. I'm not even sure anybody here would recall her because she passed away some years ago. And she was a hellion. And she would, you would just go in and wonder if you would walk out with like all 10 fingers by the end of the discussion. But I think that more of that is useful, and I think that as a mayor, to make yourself accessible to the criticism. And so with initiatives like having artists in community agencies and looking at that, I think that there's a certain accountability factor that needs to be there, and not so much to just announce something by press release and then not have the opportunity to engage. And so I think that's something I really want to do, is to have a monthly get-together where community cultural institutions, the big institutions, advocates, artists themselves could come and challenge us around things, because I have a lot of ideas. I mean, I pitched yesterday when we were at the Apapa debate in the Portola that I would like to bring first-run Chinese cinema to Portsmouth Square and have a screening there like we do in Dolores Park, and to bring it to McLaren Park, which could be a basis of creating some cultural activity and focus there on how fun that would be to kind of focus on what's our strength as a city with a dynamic Chinese-American population, and to bring leading-edge cinema in here and looking at how you look at Chinatown and think about bringing some modernity, because some of the greatest new architecture and energy is coming out of China, but yet and still, Chinatown has to be sustainable, but I think that it can be more relevant to modern experience. I can tell you that one thing that I've not been afraid to do is to kind of shake folks down for the arts. So we had a situation when Hayes Valley, not Hayes Valley, Valencia Gardens was being rebuilt, and the Bufano sculptures were moved from Valencia Gardens to the Randall Museum. And then when Valencia Gardens reopened, the people, the parents, the support, we don't want to lose these sculptures. Well, no, you had to lose those sculptures because they needed to go back, because they were originally dedicated at Valencia Gardens. But what I did was I went to the PUC and said, why can't, you're doing all this work up in the hinterlands and we're not going to put public art there. Why don't we do something exciting and create public art for the Randall that educates us about the importance of water? And so that's going to be opening in the next few weeks, and I'm excited about that. I absolutely think that America's Cup ought to pony up. I went to see John Stumpf, the CEO of Wells Fargo, this week, and it was fascinating to listen to how he was frustrated that the America's Cup views the business stakeholders as ATMs, like they're just supposed to give money, to America's Cup. And he's interested in doing things that are going to be more sustainable. He's interested in the major business sponsors being invited in to say, let's not have $1.2 billion come in like a torrent of rain and just wash through our sewer systems, and not hold on, not capture that in cisterns, and to create, whether it's businesses or cultural institutions or supporting cultural institutions. Because, God knows I'd love to see somebody in topsiders, but after a certain point, you're going to want to go do something else. And so I think that that's a great opportunity. And I truly think that the people that you traditionally think of as the funders in this area are actually interested in doing that they want to do things that are meaningful. And I would love, as mayor, to facilitate some of those discussions with arts leaders like yourself, members of the club, cultural institutions, and let's sit down with the business community and figure out something creative so that after it's gone, the worst thing is you see these Olympics. Obviously the Olympics weren't great for Greece, right? So you want to do things that are actually going to be meaningful long term. Maybe I should do my focus.
And do you have a follow-up?
Well, I was just going to ask you, you must have some favorite arts groups out there, and I was wondering why you support them, and then how would San Francisco be different if they didn't exist?
Well, I just got to go Sunday, and I was a judge for the Gold Rush pageant, and it was a drag pageant, and it was at a space called Twin Space, so it was very fun. It was at Mission and 17, and so there are two young women that operate this space, and I kind of thought they were twins because they came up at a certain point. But I've got to say, you know, I get to see a lot of drag as a gay politician, and I love it, and I think it's so powerful because without drag queens, we wouldn't have had the spark for our civil rights movement, whether it was at Compton's cafeteria or at Stonewall. And so I'm really proud of that tradition, and I think it's really so important. You know, you described us as having daughters. You know, my daughter likes to be a boy all the time, and so I think it's really important that we remind ourselves that pushing the boundaries of gender and that's a very important political statement, and I think that it's still very relevant. And I just want to say that I'm really proud of what drag brings to politics and to our city. Obviously, Pinocchio's was here for many years, but I'm so in awe of what our drag personalities do in raising money for our community. But when Proposition 8 passed, Pollo Del Mar took to the streets and led one demonstration after another. It was unbelievable. We were marching in every direction. We weren't even sure what way we were going, and she did it all in heels. And so I have a picture of her that I've kept in my office. But just again, I think that that's a really wonderful thing that I'm so proud of.
Those are our prepared questions, and now we're going to ask anybody with questions for our candidates to come over here so we can get the questions on microphone.